Hi, I'm Mark Herbert. Welcome back to the Trust Paradigm Podcast. Today I'd like to talk to you about your employment brand. And as a matter of perspective, every organization has an employment brand. Highly successful organizations at this time and place are deliberate about their employment brand. If you want to talk about why now, as we've talked about in previous podcasts, the competition for talent is becoming more competitive. People are becoming more selective about who they rent their abilities and capabilities to. And we have a change in demographics and dynamics in the workplace. A recent survey concluded that especially with our newer generations entering the workforce, that 50% of your employees in all likelihood posted something about their work or you as an employer in the last 60 days. On the positive side, 40% of what was posted was positive. Snapchat, if you're unfamiliar with that, contact your local millennial and they'll explain to you what that is, gets more views than either Twitter, currently known as X, or LinkedIn. And if you don't believe or you don't understand that the emerging generations take the information they get from their friends and colleagues a lot more credibly than they do our expensive advertising and things like that, I have a newsflash for you. Trust, as we know, is already at an all-time low. That's where they go for information. One of the other things that we have done historically is we have been very, very intrigued and very interested and very invested in worrying about how customers feel about us. And what I would submit to you is that your customers are never going to be more engaged than your employees are. And so focusing on your customers to the exclusion of your engagement of your employees is a mistake. So to get your employees to look at you as a stakeholder in an investor relationship with you, I'm going to put out 5 entitlements that I'm going to advocate that you build into your organization. The first entitlement is that every employee in your organization is entitled to clear expectations about their job. The second is every employee at your organization is entitled to get meaningful, balanced, and timely feedback about how they're doing against those expectations. The third entitlement is that they are entitled to safety, a safe environment. And when I talk about safety, I'm not talking about compliance with OSHA. I'm talking about physical, psychological, and emotional safety, an absolute entitlement to come to a place every day where they feel safe. The fourth entitlement is that they are entitled to clarity about the purpose of their role and the purpose of the organization, how they fit into that. And last but not least is that they are entitled to equitable compensation. When I talk about equitable, I'm not talking about sameness. I'm not talking about everybody makes the same. What I am talking about is that people are paid fairly and reasonably for what they bring to your organization and the work that you ask them to do. We've talked about a lot in previous podcasts about the fact that trust is the foundation for any high-functioning relationship, and I still believe that to be true. But what I'd like to do is, using that as an analogy, I'd like to start with that foundation of trust, and then I'd like to propose to you some pillars emerging from that foundation to make for a stronger organization. The first pillar is the pillar of respect. Every person in your organization has an absolute entitlement to respect for their personhood. The second pillar I'm going to suggest to you is the pillar of responsibility. If you respect people and you treat them as adults, you set clear expectations and you hold people accountable to those expectations. There is nothing equitable or fair or reasonable or even positive from a leadership standpoint into letting people perform at less than what they're capable of and less than what you need. The third pillar is information. Millennials and Gen X may be the Y generation. They came out of the womb asking why. And they're not asking why to be obnoxious. They're asking why because they watched how previous generations were handled, and we valued obedience and things like that. These folks want to understand why. What is it we do? Why is it important? How do I fit in? Does this fit with my values? The next pillar is mutual loyalty. Loyalty is something I hear a lot from executives, a lot from business leaders and things like that. But the important thing with loyalty is that loyalty is balanced and it is mutual. It cannot be a one-way street. You can't ask people for loyalty and then harp on things like employment at will and outsource and things like that. And so I think that when we take a look at events that have transpired over the last few years, at the pandemic and things like that, they're looking at those things saying, okay, is that loyalty mutual and is it reciprocated? I would also submit to you that rather than evaluating loyalty or measuring loyalty in terms of tenure, how long somebody is with you, instead what you should value is their contribution. What did they provide to the organization? What did they bring to the party while they were there? That last pillar is that people need to have in any high-functioning organization is they need to have competent, capable leadership. So let's talk about what competent, capable leadership looks like. One of the first things that competent, capable leadership involves is mastery of the skills that I talked about in the previous podcast. The second thing that is essential to effective leadership is that anybody that is part of your leadership team or extended leadership team is committed to the objective and has conviction about your values as an organization. Great leaders have clear personal vision. They're able to connect the dots for people. They're able to create line of sight so that people can see how their performance and how their contributions fit into the larger context and feel good about it. Another essential is an appreciation for diversity. And when I talk about diversity, I'm talking about it in the broadest possible context. I'm talking about age, I'm talking about ethnicity, I'm talking about experience, I'm talking about all of those things. And when I say an appreciation for it, I mean, this is not something that great leaders feel is imposed on them. It is something they embrace because they realize diversity brings strength and brings flexibility. The next leadership essential is that leaders need to be committed to the team. In every organization, there is only room for one team. If you have a bunch of teams, you're not pulling in the same direction, and it's going to show up in performance either long or short term. If you add those leadership essentials to the pillars and to the foundation, you're going to have a much stronger organization. The data demonstrates that. My own experience demonstrates that. So I appreciate you taking some time to listen, and I look forward to seeing you next time when we're going to talk about some management truths.